How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. Today we're going to talk about how much Bitcoin it would take to retire. And we're going to be looking at three different destinations. And we're also going to look at how much you'd have to invest right now if you want to get to that point. We're going to look at different scenarios too. Are you going to just barely scrape by? Are you going to live filthy rich and be able to spend 10 times what the average person spends there? So we're going to go through a lot of different examples. If you don't mind, hit subscribe, turn on that bell notification underneath the video, and let's get into it. So if you're investing in cryptocurrency, you probably think Bitcoin's going to do quite well over the coming years. You probably think that a lot of other smaller cap cryptos are going to do well as well. And today we're going to be exploring Bitcoin. Maybe we'll do other cryptocurrencies in future videos. I've done them in the past, so I definitely don't mind doing them. I think they're fun. But we're going to be going through how much it would take to retire. Now, I should say off the bat that there are some assumptions we're going to make. We're going to assume different Bitcoin prices. So maybe Bitcoin only goes up to $100,000. Maybe it goes up to $1 million. Maybe it goes up to $2 million. We're going to be looking at different scenarios. And you kind of have to plot where you think Bitcoin's going to go to then determine how much Bitcoin you'll need and how much do you want to spend as well. Now, I do think diversification is key. So this is not trying to tell you to go out and buy all the Bitcoin you can, sell everything and buy Bitcoin. I do think having some stocks is important, or some equities, making sure you have some property, some cash sitting on the sidelines in case there's opportunities in the market. But I also think that crypto is going to do extremely well. So that's why I want to make this exercise. Now, let me know what you think about this underneath the video. There's a lot going on here. So let's go through some of the assumptions first. First of all, we're going to assume that the safe withdrawal rate is 4%. Now, this is a traditional finance rule. Basically, if you have a portfolio of $1 million, you can take out 4% of it, and that's $40,000. You can basically take that out each year, and then the appreciation will make up for what you are pulling out. So you should, in most cases, I believe it's around 96% of the time, be okay if you take out 4% of your portfolio. It's going to be different for cryptocurrency because we have a lot more upside. We have a lot more volatility, though, as well. So the safe withdrawal rate is used in traditional finance. We're going to use it here. I think it would hold up if you looked at the past for Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin would actually do better than the safe withdrawal rate of 4%, but we'll be a little bit conservative here. The other thing we're going to look at are different scenarios. Coasting fire standing for financial independence, retiring early. So coasting fire is basically you buy enough assets that you can not worry about investing for a while. You can just work and pay your bills, and then eventually you'll be able to retire. So a lot of people think about like, oh, if you have a really high stress corporate job, you make enough money, so then you can go to a job that you really like, or go become a barista or something like that, go work at a bar in the Caribbean, and then be able to retire later how you want, but then just kind of pay the bills for a while. So in this scenario, we're going to assume that after 2033, Bitcoin compounds at just a 10% annual growth rate. So just like what the market does, what traditional stocks or the index funds do. And then we also have lean fire. We're going to assume that lean fire is 95% of the cost of living. So whatever country we're looking at, if we spend $100,000, let's say, we're going to assume that lean fire is 95% cost of living. So you're leaving a little bit below your means, but below the average. But that's because you don't have to go work. So maybe you just don't spend as much on like work clothes or work lunches or that kind of thing, gas to and from work. So it's basically cost of living minus a little bit. Then traditional fire, we're going to assume that it's actually a little bit above cost of living because who wants to be average? I think everyone that's retiring early wants to have a little bit more freedom to do what they want. Maybe they want to travel a little bit more. So we're going to assume that it's 20% over cost of living. Fat fire is like you're living really well. That's going to be 3 times the cost of living. So again, if someone's spending $60,000 on average in a country, you're going to spend $180,000. You want to be able to have a really nice house, nice cars, go vacation, travel the world, whatever you want to do. And then filthy rich fire, basically you can do whatever you want. You have 10 times the cost of living. Of course, you can't buy private jets at this point, but you can probably fly first class or business class. You can have nicer boats. You can have pretty much whatever car you want. Even if it's a Lamborghini, you want 2 Lamborghinis, you can do that. So you can live, again, however you want, pretty much, with the exception of maybe private jets and having yachts and stuff like that. So that is the setup. Now, in this first scenario, we're going to go over what it would be like to retire in the US. Now, the US average cost of living is about $5,852 a month. Again, for some people, it's more expensive. For some people, it's less. It depends where you live, how you live, that kind of thing. But we're just going to use the normal median cost of living. And then we're going to go over one of the number one rated place to live in the world. And then we're also going to go over if you want to live like in a beach town. And that will be one of the scenarios we're going over too. So let's look at this. If you think Bitcoin's going to hit $100,000, so you just think a nice 3.5x, 4x from here in 10 years. So for the traditional world, this would be kind of a lot of appreciation, basically a 3.5 to 4x in 10 years. Usually the indices about 2 to 3x in 10 years. But in this scenario, we're going to assume $100,000. Well, to hit coasting fire, you need about 5 Bitcoin, 5.04. Again, that's going to assume that it continues to compound at 10% annually after that 10 years from now. So after 2033, you're going to wait 15 years. So by 2048, you'll be able to retire. If you think Bitcoin is going a little bit higher, obviously you're not going to need as much. Let's say it hits 250,000 in 10 years, basically a 9x from here. You need about 2 Bitcoin. If you thought it was going to hit 500,000, it'd be about 1 Bitcoin. Then all the way down to, if you think it's going to be $2 million, and I realize that sounds crazy, but if it just gets up to gold's market cap and gold appreciates by 3% every year for the next 10 years, if it gets up to gold's market cap, that would be about a $850,000 Bitcoin. Well, if you hit 2 times gold's market cap, if it starts being accepted, if people put it in pension funds, there's going to be a lot of scarcity. So maybe it does hit $1 million or $2 million. And keep in mind that the US dollar is debasing as well over that time. Well, then maybe you'd get about 0.25 Bitcoin to be able to retire. Now, I think a lot of people want to hit retirement faster than 25 years down the line. So let's say you want to hit lean fire. So you don't want to go ball out, but you just want to be able to retire, be able to relax, spend time with friends and family. Well, if you think Bitcoin's going to hit 100,000, well, you'd need about 16.68 Bitcoin. That's a lot for a lot of people. We'll go through some scenarios too where you can make it a lot cheaper than it is right now, or just basically if you had bought at the lows, we'll look at how much money it would actually cost, because it wouldn't be that much if you look at some of the last bear market numbers. But let's go down to, let's say you think it's going to hit 500,000. Again, 500,000 in 10 years, I don't think is crazy. You need about 3.34 Bitcoin. So again, the cost of living in this example is about $70,000 a year. So for lean fire, you'd get about $67,000 a year. You'd need only about 3.34 Bitcoin, which is awesome. Now, moving over to traditional fire, let's go down to the $1 million example. You need about 2.11 Bitcoin, which at today's prices is less than $60,000. Attainable. Not saying easy, but definitely attainable for a lot of people, a lot of investors out there. If you try to dollar cost average and make more money and then put it into Bitcoin, definitely attainable. Obviously, I'm not going to go through every different example here, but you can kind of go through. If you think Bitcoin's going to hit $1 million and you want Fat Fire 3 times the cost of living, it would cost about 5.27 Bitcoin. So in this example, you're spending about $210,000 a year, and you're going to have about 5.27 Bitcoin at $1 million. So, I mean, we're talking about $5.25 million. You're going to be really well off. And then Filthy Rich Fire, if you want to ball out, spend, what is that, $700,000 a year? So like, I don't know, $55,000 a month. You would need about 17 Bitcoin, or about $17.56 million. Again, using 4% as a safe withdrawal rate. Now, I want to go through some other examples, how you can make this cheaper, some other cool countries that you could live in. But I do want to say there's a link underneath the video to Bag Tracker AI. This is a app that I'm making with 2 other people where you can track all your finances in one place. We're talking about crypto, stocks, cash, and then you can measure it against Bitcoin. So if you really do believe Bitcoin is going to do really great things in the future, you probably want to track your progress. How many Bitcoin do you have? And then also, how much is your portfolio worth in Bitcoin? So can you actually keep the consistent amount of Bitcoin? Can you actually gain Bitcoin? Or are you actually losing because you're investing in things that aren't doing as well as Bitcoin? And you're also going to be able to track all your crypto investments, so you don't have to go into 5 different wallets to look at how much crypto you actually have. You can plug it all in here, and we're going to have a lot of other cool features as well. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link to it underneath the video. Just hit pre-register so that way you can make sure that you're in the first version of the website. Here you just put in your name, email, and then tell us what you want, what features you want, because we're still looking to get feedback to make sure that we provide the best experience possible. So definitely check that out underneath the video. Now, what if you want to go somewhere else? Where else would you want to go? Well, I looked at the top 10 places to live in the world, and I went down to number 1. What is it? Well, it's Austria. So Vienna, Austria has an overall rating 98.4, stability 100, healthcare 100, culture and environment 93.5, education 100, infrastructure 100. Sounds like an awesome place to go. I've never been there, but definitely would love to visit. And the cost of living there is about 4,092 euros, which in US dollars is about $4,300 a month. So it's actually cheaper than the US. Crazy. But here the cost of living is about $52,000 a year. So we're going to run the same thing. Basically, if you want to run a little bit lean, like 95% of the cost of living, that would cost about 49,000 US dollars. And then we're going to go all the way to filthy rich fire, spending about $500,000 a year. So how much Bitcoin would you need? And then we're going to go through the beach town as well. So cost of living, again, $51,000. So if you are just trying to coast to fire and you think Bitcoin's going to hit, let's say 250,000, you need about 1.48 Bitcoin. And you can see how that stacks up, 1.48 versus 2.02. So definitely more attainable here because the cost of living is lower. And then you can go over to traditional fire. Again, if you think Bitcoin's going to hit $500,000, which is less than the market cap of gold right now, if you think it's still going to be worth less than gold in 10 years, you could have only about 3.1 Bitcoin. You could live with a cost of living spending 20% more than the cost of living there, and you would still be able to live on just 3.1 Bitcoin. Then you can go down the line. If you think Bitcoin's going to hit $1 million and you want you want fat fire, so 3 times the cost of living, you could live on about 4 Bitcoin. And if you want filthy rich fire and you think Bitcoin's going to hit $1 million, you need about 12.9 Bitcoin. So definitely difficult. Fat fire is not easy because you are still spending a lot of money, but you can see how if Bitcoin goes up a lot, it's definitely more attainable. What if you wanted to go to Mexico? Mexico is a pretty cool place. A lot of people in the U.S. travel to Mexico. Now, the cost of living here is a little bit higher than Southeast Asia, as I understand, but I want to plug it in here because there are so many U.S. citizens that watch this. But I could definitely do this with a cheaper area as well if you want that in the future. The cost of living for a family of 4, all these are family of 4, by the way. Cost of living for a family of 4 is $34,752. Now, in these 2, I don't account for healthcare costs because I think that is how they pull the cost of living is with that being the average cost. So a lot of people have health insurance through work. So just keep that in mind. You might need to come up with some interesting ways of going around that. Now, a lot of the time they have subsidies as well if you only make so much a year, which if you're pulling out $34,000, you might actually qualify for. So just keep that in mind. You might have to have a little bit more than what we're saying here. Cost of living for Mexico, though, is under $35,000, which means that you would only need about $42,000 a year to live on for traditional fire. And then even fat fire would only be about $104,000 a year USD. So I think that could be a pretty cool place to live, and you wouldn't need that much Bitcoin compared to a lot of other places. If you think Bitcoin's going to hit 500,000, and you're talking about traditional fire, spending 20% more than the average person, you need about 2.09 Bitcoin. Not all that much, at least compared to some of these other scenarios. It gets cheaper and cheaper, obviously, as you go down in price, or as you spend less each year, and as you lower the cost of living. So you could live a really good life in Mexico, traditional fire, if Bitcoin hits $1 million with just 1.04 Bitcoin. So really cool to go through this. I just love these kinds of exercises. Kind of get your brain moving, keep you motivated to accumulate more Bitcoin. But what if this is all too much? What if you can't buy this much Bitcoin? Let's go back to the US example, right? You think Bitcoin's going to hit 500,000 in 10 years. You want to retire. Well, you need 4.21 Bitcoin. What if you can't get there? Well, that is the beautiful thing of bear markets. So the cost today, let's go through that. Cost today is a little bit more expensive than it has been throughout the rest of the year. Of course, we're around 28,500 for Bitcoin right now. I don't know what day exactly I'm posting this, so it could be up or down a little bit from here. But $250,000 Bitcoin in 2033. If you want to hit traditional fire, which again is, let's say you think Bitcoin's going to hit 500,000. Traditional fire, you'd need about 4.21 Bitcoin. Well, that would cost you about $120,000 here today. A lot of people can't do that. I get that. But if you're able to buy at opportune times or just dollar cost average, the cost of this during the bottom of their bear market would have been about $65,000. So instead of 120, you're paying 65. Now, I'm not saying you can time the bottom perfectly, but if you're able to buy over time, DCA, you could be in between these two numbers, between $65,000 and $120,000. Maybe it's $90,000 is your average cost if you're able to buy throughout the bear market. And if you go back over time, it becomes cheaper and cheaper the longer you're invested in the market. In 2018, at the bottom of the bear market, when Bitcoin was just about $3,200, you could have bought this amount of Bitcoin for $13,500. 4.21 Bitcoin for $13,500. Obviously, you're going to be able to retire pretty quickly if you buy at 3,200 and that goes up to 500,000. Right? It's 150x. You don't need that much money to be able to retire. Now, you might say, great, well, I wasn't here in 2018. I wasn't able to buy. So what good is that for me? Well, in 4 more years, I'll probably make the same video and we'll be looking at this saying, wow, this was really cheap, $65,000. Now I'd have to pay, $250,000. So as time goes on, it continues to be the case where if you had bought earlier, you'd do better. So it's just, again, motivation to buy some now. So that way you don't have to spend 5x more or 10x more in the next cycle. So let me know your thoughts on all this underneath the video. Again, check out Bag Tracker AI. We're really proud of how this is going so far. We're really excited to continue to work on this and make the best all-in-one net worth tracker out there that's going to have a lot of other information that's relevant for crypto investors as well. And let me know what you think about some of these assumptions. Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think I should do this with other cryptocurrencies? Do you think that I should do this with other countries? Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video.